Hello, and welcome to Sobercast, where we provide AA speaker meetings and workshops in podcast format. We're an ad-free podcast, and if you enjoy listening, please help us be self-supporting by visiting Sobercast.com, look for the donate link, and drop $1 or $2 into our virtual basket. We hope you enjoy the podcast. Have a great day.
Let's get this panel started with Teresa.
Hi everybody, I'm Teresa and I'm an alcoholic.
Hi Teresa! We love you, Teresa! Lots and lots and lots! How much? And a whole bunch of it!
There we go. Some enthusiasm back there. Alright, so I think it's important to mention, or at least get started with how I used to deal with things, and how things used to happen in my life before I got sober. The adventures before, most of you know what that's like. We go through tough things that are usually of our own making, and then when we try to deal with those things that go bad, we don't deal with them very well. How I was no exception to that. How I got in here, how I hit bottom, yeah, there was, just a ton of drinking involved, obviously. That's how I'm here. But sort of the thing that really pushed me in the door was that I was in a ridiculously codependent relationship, and when we broke up, I had no idea how to handle that. He had cheated on me, and I was trying to figure out how to handle that, and I realized that drinking wouldn't fix my problem. I had nothing left when I didn't have this guy and alcohol. And when I realized that the alcohol just wasn't working anymore, it wasn't even making me forget my problems anymore. It was just adding new ones. And I realized that I tried to kill myself. I slit my wrist and ended up in the emergency room and all that kind of good stuff. And long story short, I ended up getting sober because of those last horrific months of drinking and this really sick codependent relationship that I had. In sobriety, the first year I was sober, when I had 4 months sober, my best friend died. She died in a car accident. And at the time, I'd been going to meetings, I had a sponsor, I had sort of made some half-hearted attempts to work the steps. And I'd started praying to this higher power that I didn't understand, but I was making some of the attempts. I can't, in all honesty, tell you that I, jumped right in 100%, that I was all about the steps, that I was working this as we should and reading the big book and, being a good AA member. That's not who I was and what I was when I first came in those first few months. But I had learned enough that, when she died, that drinking wasn't going to fix the situation. It was not going to bring her back. And she had stuck by me during those last, several months of me drinking all over, this guy. That guy that I told you about, it's his sister. She was the one that died. So I went off to this funeral, and subsequently got kicked out of my home. My dad kicked me out, because I wasn't willing to follow the rules. And, that's when I got back a week later. But I managed to stay sober through that, knowing that I was kicked out of my house. My best friend was dead. And it was not all roses and sunshine. It was, grabbing hold of this, white knuckling it, through that week of horror is what it felt like. Calling my sponsor every day, praying as often as I could find a moment, but also being of service while I was there. The adventures after is not so much in the bad things that happen. It's what do we do when those bad things happen? I practiced the principles to the best of my ability at the time. I was able to be of service to her family, even though I was, in this really uncomfortable situation and, I was going through a lot of pain. 2 weeks after that, I got a phone call from one of the girls that my, this other higher power, the ex-boyfriend, cheated on me with, and she, left a voicemail on my phone saying that she was HIV positive and I need to go get myself checked. So that was 2 weeks after my best friend died. And of course, I went through the freak out, I went through the panic, and then I went through okay, what do I do? And the first things that popped into my head was call my sponsor, talk to another alcoholic, pray, work these principles, even with the little experience that I had, this is 4.5, 5 months sober. The first year was really, really tough. I sort of got all the really, really bad drama under my belt within that first year. And things after that were much, much easier to deal with when you sort of learn what to do in those crisis moments. And it becomes sort of habit to know what to do when those things happen. That was the first year. And it's not that bad things haven't happened to me since then. Nothing quite of that magnitude has happened since then. But I guess another thing that's happened more recently is that I sort of dealt with the cheating boyfriend thing in sobriety again, or for the first time in sobriety, but the first time also since the really, really, huge meltdown right before I got sober. And this time, the reaction was the same as the other crises that I had been in. It wasn't, there was that, that heart dropping into your stomach moment, and the, what did I do wrong? Beating myself up for the first probably, 10, 15 minutes, before I started seeing my part, and that's one of the other things that we're sort of trained to do in AA, doing that 4th and 5th or 10th step, seeing my part, working through that, learning from those experiences. Those are the things that I was taught in this program. It wasn't about, pointing the finger and making somebody else the villain of the story. It's about me learning from my experience and my mistakes. And what did I do? I called another member of AA. A really good friend of mine was there for me. Actually, several good friends of mine were there for me. And they didn't hesitate to be there for me, to listen to me bitch. I had to get it out of my system. And then, called my sponsor and she said, all right, well, we need to work on this. We knew that we needed to work on this. Now you might actually be willing to work on it. And that seems to be pretty true no matter how long I have in sobriety, that I'm still not quite willing to make a preemptive step for my benefit. I have to wait until the pain gets long enough or, gets bad enough to work on something. But that's what we did. We got back into the steps. We started, going back to that. I've been sober for 6 years. It was 6 years in April. But, the things that I'm supposed to do are the same as when I had one day. It's important for me to remember that. And I don't always remember that when everything's really great. It takes those sort of crisis moments for me to realize that I'm not doing everything that I'm supposed to be doing. I'm not making it to enough meetings. I'm not making myself available to sponsor people like I should. It's not that I'm not sponsoring people. It's just I'm not making myself available to continue to carry that message. And I'm not focusing on the things that I need to be doing every single day for my sobriety. Because sometimes it's like, I've worked the 12 steps. I don't need to do anything about that today. And that's not true. One of the best things I've ever heard, when I was early in sobriety wasn't that, you work the 12 steps. It's you will be working the 12 steps for the rest of your life. If you're lucky, if you work at it. Practicing the principles in all my affairs means continuing to work those 12 steps and applying them. But I think it's only through those adversities that I have the motivation to do it. Because I'm like everybody else. I slack off. I rest on my laurels, my achievements of yesterday. And the funny thing about that is that, really not a whole lot of those things are my achievements. Showing up and being a decent human being, that's my achievement. Congratulations, you're the fastest runner in the Special Olympics. So, I can't pat myself on the back for doing the next right thing for any of the length of time that I have. But I can say that I showed up and that, despite these things happening to me, that's sort of the joke, is that these things never just happen to me. But despite those things happening, we'll just put it that way, that we continue on. I haven't had to take a drink since I came into AA and picked up my white chip. And again, I don't think that that's, that it's because I'm special. Really, it wasn't white-knuckling it through some of those hard times and just being willing to do anything to stay sober. And what's funny about that is if somebody had asked me when I first, my first night in, when I picked up my white chip, would you be willing to do anything to stay sober? I don't think that I could have answered that question with a yes. I wouldn't have said, yes, absolutely. But I found over time that I was. When you guys asked me to do something, when you told me that this is in your best interest, work these steps, I found that I was willing to do it. I couldn't answer that question with a yes right off the bat, but when, every time I'd hit, sort of that choice between the right thing or the easy thing, I was choosing the right thing when it counted. But I just went blank. So I'm glad to be here, and it's awesome to be able to do these things with young people. And I'm just going to sit down and shut up now.
Hi, I'm Mark. I'm an alcoholic.
Hey, Mark. Lots and lots and lots. How much? And bunches.
I'd like to thank you guys for having this. Thanks to Dave for picking us up from the airport. Spending 5 hours of his day with us. That was real nice of him. Let's see. I first tried to get sober kind of on a whim. I randomly checked myself into a detox, went in for 5 days. I wasn't really listening to anything the people at the rehab were saying. And I just went in real quick and went out, and then still really wasn't sure why I had done that. I just knew something was way off with me. Like, I just didn't feel right, didn't feel good. I was miserable, pretty much, for lack of a better word. After that, I guess I kind of half-assed going to meetings, went to a couple here and there. It was clear I just didn't know what I was supposed to be doing, to get sober, or if I even really wanted to get sober. I wasn't sure. So I decided, about 30 days into this first stint at sobriety that, I could drink again. Try, like they say in the book, like, if you're not sure, try some controlled drinking. So I was like, okay, I'll do that. So I did it, and, the first night I'd said to myself that I wouldn't get involved in some other substances, wouldn't do some other things, I just want to drink. And, that didn't work out. The first night I was back to my old ways, doing my old stuff. And that lasted for like 4 months. And then just at the end of that 4 months, like I was given the gift of, I went out one day in the summer, we were going to bars, I went to a happy hour, probably had 12 beers or something like that in a few hours. And I came back to my place and I wasn't drunk. And I just felt I just felt so bad. I felt so shitty. That I decided that, maybe AA was the thing for me. Or not even AA, just something. I didn't really know what. So I was like, all right, I'm going to give it another shot. Didn't go to rehab, just went right back to AA. And it was like I had a real bad weekend that weekend, and I knew that I had to do something. So, whatever, okay. I went back to AA, and it still wasn't really clicking with what I needed to do. And even if I did want to stay sober, I didn't know what. I just knew that what my way of living was not the answer to what I wanted. I didn't want that way of life for whatever reason. So I went back to AA, and I just kept going to meetings, and I just started to hear something, I guess, subconsciously, or I really don't know what it was. And I started to get a fire for the program. It was really intriguing me, I guess, for lack of a better word. And I started listening to a lot of speaker tapes. Actually, I went away on a family vacation when I had about 30 days or something like that, and I just remember being sober at 30 days with really not much God in my life, or anything, really, that I was just so, discontent, times 10. I was just so, couldn't be in my own skin type of stuff. It was just awful. And looking back, I could see that, but at the time I didn't really know. I just kind of thought that was normal, and maybe this was sobriety. Is this sobriety? Okay, I don't really want this. But I kept listening to these tapes, and I kept going to a ton of meetings. I went to 2-3 meetings for about 4 months there, and I just started liking it, I guess. I started liking what people were saying and having hope in what people were saying that it worked. So I just kept doing it, and I was doing my stuff. And I still feel pretty discontented and stuff like that, but meetings were keeping me going. I had no God relationship really at this point. And then I met my sponsor. I was looking for a sponsor kind of thing. And I thought that the power was within myself to find the right sponsor and stuff like that. When it just if I just kept the willingness up and kept going, it just came to me kind of thing. It wasn't me that was doing that. So I think just having the willingness there, things work out. So I got a sponsor. Started working the steps, and I started to feel relief. Going through the steps, I was lucky because I was very willing to do it because I was just in such a bad place at the time that I just didn't want what I had before. So going through the steps was a really enlightening process. Going through step 5 for me was really big. Just like kind of coming to the realization that like my problems were my own doing, and not being a victim. That's like kind of like fiction. And crazy things that I never thought would be like I could see it as my own fault. I could see like crazy situations where for instance, like a money situation where someone maybe I thought screwed me over for money or something like that, and then I look back at what I had done in this process, and I was like, wow, that was my fault. Stuff that just I could never see before for whatever reason I could just see, and it was really it was really cool, and then I could apply that in my everyday life, kind of thing. Like when I would get mad at certain situations, I would be like, wait, what am I doing here? What's my side of the street? Type thing. And then I just think it's crazy that I thought I was the shyest person in the world, and doing stuff was kind of out of my range of doing things. And then when I started to get asked to do certain things like speak or I don't know, even just approaching new people, that was really, really hard for me because I just felt so awkward and whatever. And then just doing it and doing it with the power behind me that I thought maybe I could help someone else really helped me get out of myself and just do it and just be it doesn't matter if I look dumb here, I'm just trying to help someone else, and if it works, it works. If not, I did my part. And kind of that opened up doors for me to start thinking about other people, which is so unlike my normal way of life. My way of life is just to do anything that will give me pleasure or anything that's going to get me ahead type deal. And then starting to work with others was just it's just such a cool thing because you really can just put your troubles aside and, get into someone else's world and, care about them. And it's just, I'm not going to say I'm always thinking of other people because that's far from the truth. But whenever I am, I feel that relief, I just feel all right, well, I'm not even thinking about my own shit right now. I can do this, I can get this relief. And as far as, going through things, I just don't think that I could deal, regardless of how big or small it is, it's all perception. I wouldn't be able to deal with any of this stuff without going through the steps, is the bottom line. I don't know how to live. And the steps, taught me how to live. And, just getting, getting mad and stuff like that, that kind of went away. Or at least it's manageable. I'm not saying I don't get mad, but, I can step back and say, wait, I'm being a baby here. I'm so self-centered that it's crazy. I'll share this situation that happened a couple weeks ago. I was at a meeting and I was texting. And at this meeting, you're not allowed to text. And I knew that. And I think I just kind of, I was just being whatever. I had it in my head, the big ego that I was at a meeting where I didn't like what the people really had to say, that I thought that they weren't doing the right thing because they weren't working the steps. And I just had all this bad attitude going on in my head. So I kind of just did whatever. And some guy came up to me and he probably approached me the wrong way, and said, can you please stop texting? He didn't say it like that. He said, stop texting and go outside, something like that. And he had a little bit of an attitude about it. And I got real mad right away. And then after talking to my sponsor about it, I'm looking back, it was totally my fault. I totally shouldn't have been doing it. And I thought about it, if I had seen this guy going up to someone else, and questioning them for texting or whatever, I would have approached that a completely different way as opposed to him doing it to me. When he was doing it to me, I got real defensive. And that right there just shows me whoa, I'm crazy. Whenever something involves me, it's this big thing. And so it just doesn't make any sense. So that kind of started to help me, understand my sickness and understanding how self-centered and self-centered fear really that's there. So yeah, that's really all I have to share. Thanks again for having this. This is really cool.
My name's Josh, and I'm an alcoholic.
Hi, Joshua. We love you, Joshua. Lots and lots and lots.
How much?
And
Well, hope you all feel better. So when Latham asked me to go to this panel, he told me it was about not relapsing and people that hadn't relapsed. And so, and then when he shared what it was about, I was like, oh, well, it's not about what he told me it was. So thank you, Latham. I went to bed at 3:30 in the morning last night. For some reason, we just drank a bunch of Red Bull, and then it got to the point where like my eyes wouldn't shut, but everything else was done. And so I was just sitting there on my couch, and I was like, well, this is gonna be fun. So then I hopped out of bed at 8 o'clock this morning to make the drive up here. But I got sober in Huntsville. My sobriety date is March 1st of 2005. I got sober almost exactly 6 months after my 21st birthday. I always thought 21 would fix everything, and it just made it much, much worse. Much more accessible. I haven't relapsed. It's been coming up on 7.5 years now, and I sit in meetings on a regular basis, and people share about something they did while they were drinking, and I was like, I did that like last month. And it's just it's humiliating. Since I've been in recovery, I remember the first death I experienced. I was in treatment. My mom came and sat me down and told me that my great aunt had passed away, and I was like, okay, well, I'm in treatment. I don't know if you're familiar with this process, but I can't really sit still right now. Did you bring cigarettes? And that was about the extent that got dealt with. Like at 21 with 3 days sober, I was like, she was 93 years old. What did y'all expect? That's how much I cared about it. 4 months ago, my grandfather of 96 years passed away, and he was 96. He wasn't my grandpa for 96 years. He only had that privilege for 28. He essentially raised me for about 3 years, and by raised me I mean picked me up from school and drug me around, and he instilled some of the core values in my life that I value the most. And so he was getting sick, and my mom called me. She let me know, she's called me a lot at that time, and to let me know what was going on. And I might cry. Who knows? I'm sorry if I do. I hate crying. But she called me. I work at a bank now, which is weird. I get like $15,000 a day at my disposal, and I haven't even stolen $1, which is crazy to me. But she called me and she let me know my grandpa was sick, and she let me know what was going on, and she would call me every day and keep me updated. And I was just like, well, when your parents call you and you say, well, let me know what I need to do, and you mean it, that's truly a gift of the 12-step program. And so she called me on a Thursday night. She said, Grandpa's going in the hospital, and we don't really know. And I said, do we need to leave now? And she said, no. She said, what I want you to do is I want you to take me down there Saturday, and you can come home Sunday, and then I'm going to stay down there for a week, and why don't you come pick me up the next Saturday? And I said, fine. Just let me know when I need to leave. And she called me. I was walking into the regions on Lakeshore in Birmingham, and phone rang. And you know when the phone rings and the phone rang, and I picked up the phone, and she was in hysterics. And I just looked at my boss and I said, I'll see you in about a week. And I dropped everything I had. I went home, and I did the worst packing job I've ever done in my life. But I took my entire wardrobe, I think. So it worked out well. Except for t-shirts. Who goes to Florida and doesn't take t-shirts? But this guy. That was at 10 o'clock in the morning. I got my mom to South Florida at 4 o'clock in the morning. I didn't stop. She's like, Josh, we can stop. I was like, no, we're getting you there. And we got to the hospital. They wouldn't let us in. So I went and found a hotel, and I got my mom in there. And for the next week, I watched my grandfather die every day. we'd go in there, and he wanted a feeding tube. What happened was he is 96 years old, and his throat had collapsed, and he couldn't. And they had already fixed it once, and so what they were going to have to do is they were going to have to insert this feeding tube in his stomach to feed him, but that was going to mean he was wheelchair bound. And my grandfather fought in World War II, and he had been retired since 1977. And the last thing I wanted my grandfather to do in his last days was suffer with a feeding tube in his stomach. And so my mom asked me my opinion, and I said we need to let him die. And so then I had to watch my mom walk in the room and say, Dad, you're dying. And my mom walked out of that room and she hugged me and she cried on my shoulder. And and I promptly walked out of that room and I went to the Bayshore Club in Port St. Lucie, Florida. And I got about 30 minutes of a meeting in before she called me again, and I had to leave. And he checked into hospice, and on my grandfather's last breaths, I held his hand. I didn't take any of the Oxycontin they gave him. It didn't even cross my mind. I funded my family. I brought my family down from New York. I brought my mom down. I funded my entire family's trip to be there. And I didn't get drunk. We left Florida. We left the funeral, and we were driving back to Decatur, Alabama. And my mom looked at me and she said, "Thanks for being the voice of reason." And I said, "What?" She said, "Thanks for being the voice of reason." And I laughed because nobody in my family has ever said that to me. And that's a little bit of the personal adventures now. That happened right before I picked up my 7-year medallion, and drinking wasn't an option. You know, that's when I get drunk. That's like I get drunk, I go to a bar, and then we sit around. I go to a bar in Birmingham, Alabama, and then we sit around and we talk about how much my grandfather meant to me while I leave my mom to fend for herself, and talk about how good of a man my grandfather is, and pour one out for my grandpa, and all these things. And I do nothing to support the theory that I love my grandfather, and I just sit there and get drunk and try to fix it. Let's see what else. Personal adventures before and after. I thought it was about relapsing. I had a lot of great stories about not relapsing. So I'm going to pull Latham aside later, and I'm just going to tell him all of those. So get ready. But no, as many of y'all know, last August, I weighed 300 pounds, and I went on a all liquid diet for 13 weeks. I took in 800 calories a day, and the program taught me that I can make a commitment, I can stick to a commitment, and I lost 80 pounds on that. And I still do it. And that was really going to tie in well to my relapsing and understanding what it's like, because man, I can eat great for about a week, and then somebody gives me fried chicken, and then but anyway, I really wanted to tell you all that story, so there's that story. It was going to be a lot better had this panel been about relapsing, but fucking Latham. I too can share a little bit about relationships. Some of you guys know I'm a big Widespread Panic fan. I mean, as I stand here, I'm wearing patchouli right now. You know, I'm a hippie, tried and true. I dress a lot nicer these days. None of my clothes have patchwork, and I don't have to go on tour anymore. But other than that, I still see them all the time. And so I was sitting in a meeting at my old home group here in Huntsville, and this real cute girl walked in, and she was wearing a Widespread Panic t-shirt, and I might as well have stood up and yelled dibs, for all intents and purposes. And so she picked up a white key tag, and I picked her up. And as you can imagine, it was one of the more healthy experiences I've had in my life. For 2.5 years, she was consistently in and out of the rooms, and as you can imagine, our relationship was consistently on and off. And it got to the point where I didn't even care anymore, and all kinds of feelings got wrapped up in it. And so I moved to get away from her. Moved to Birmingham. I was like, that'll fix it, and did not fix it. I don't know if you guys have ever moved in sobriety, but I moved to Birmingham at 5 years, and it's probably the hardest thing I've ever had to do. Well, see, what happens is, you know how everybody's supposed to treat you when you're a new, when you go to the meetings. So walked into meetings and nobody was like, hey, we're great that, my name's so-and-so, great you're here, and nobody did that. I mean, I'm sure they did it. I just didn't want to hear it. I would leave every meeting and I would go home and I would lay in bed and I would talk to her, and then I would get up the next day and do what I had to do, and when I wasn't doing what I was supposed to be doing, I was on the phone talking to her, and I went sponsorless for a while. I should have told y'all, I switched fellowships about 2 months before I moved to Birmingham. I was a committed member of the Narcotics Anonymous Fellowship, and it just stopped working for me. And I needed something different. It's no knock against Narcotics Anonymous, and I don't want anybody to say anything different that I said. But I made a switch. I got the 8th wonder of the world, David Gray, to sponsor me, and we started moving on. And so I moved to Birmingham, and I isolated with her just as well as I can isolate with cocaine and painkillers and alcohol. I can isolate just as well with a girl, and so I did that. I didn't make any new friends. I laid in bed, and then my life was completely devoted to her and what she needed. And a year later, I had a sponsor, and he was like, "Why don't you go to Al-Anon?" And I was like, "No, I don't need that." And so I went to Al-Anon, and then I did need it, and I started doing that, and I started getting a little bit better, and then I'm an alcoholic. I've never woke up in the morning with a smile on my face, held a cup of coffee, and it was in a good mood, and I'm like, I'm going to work some steps today. Sounds great. Let's take an inventory. You guys want to do that? It's never happened that way. It's always been like, hey, sponsor, I think I'm about to kill myself, or I think I'm about to go get drunk. He's like, well, why don't we take a look at that? I've always got to be in so much pain to do work. Like, I wish it wasn't the case for me. But we get to this point in recovery where it's either I shouldn't say we. I have no idea what y'all do. I get to this point in recovery where it's either I have two choices. I can either start working a program again, or I can get drunk. Every time it seems like it gets to that point for me. Those points are much farther apart now. They're also my threshold for pain is a lot lower these days. Some of the stuff like that first 4-step you did where everything was about drinking and drugs, it's all that fault, like right here. And then that second 4-step I did, it was all because I was a newcomer. And then when I moved to Birmingham and I started doing work at 5 years, and my sponsor said the best way to get to know you is if we go through the book together. So we started going through the book together. We did another 4-step. And guess what? There was still stuff on it, I was kind of baffled because I thought I was all right, like that fatal flaw, well, I don't have any resentments. And my sponsor looked me in the eye and he said, why don't we start with people you'd be uncomfortable having a one-on-one dinner with? I was like, oh. As you can imagine, resentment started flowing. Resentment, like good resentments too, like stuff I didn't even think about from like when I got sober. I was like, well, what about this lady? And I think it was great that there was a service panel today, because every time I get wherever I am and it's either drink or not drink, services would always picks me back up. I've just recently, so I finally broke up with that girl. We don't talk anymore. Yeah, go team. Takes a village. Couple of them, Birmingham and Huntsville, and a few points in between. She did it to me. You know what the best part is? She's coming up on 6 months sober, and she's happy, and it's with another guy, and it's not me, and I'm okay with it. Like whatever, it happened. God has a sense of humor. He's not cruel. He's laughing. And I'm starting to laugh about it too. So it's cool. And I didn't get drunk over it. I didn't have to, because I've learned today that drinking was always the solution. It was never the problem. Like drinking was always where I turned. I can put together periods of sobriety. I can stop drinking from Friday to Friday. I don't know about y'all, but Friday was like a national holiday in my book. Paycheck would come and paycheck would go, all on Friday. And I would stop until next Friday because I had to. towards the end, and then it got to the point where I learned how to negotiate deals and stuff like that, and pawn stuff, and then it's just we do the work that's necessary. We keep coming back. We get a sponsor. We work steps. I forgot to tell y'all that my home group's Young Timers in Birmingham. It's very important to get involved in a group. You can't just come in here and I live in Birmingham now, and I can go to a different meeting every day for a while. I was listening to a speaker on the way up here, and he was from Los Angeles, and he said that he could probably go to a different meeting every day for 9.5 years. And he wasn't joking, and I could probably do that for about 5 years. And I could really not get to know anybody and not let anybody know. But what's really important is getting settled in a group and getting a circle of friends and letting them know. So when things like your grandfather passes away, or you're going through the stuff with the girlfriends or boyfriends or whatever, when your pets die, I don't know about y'all, but God, I form a bond with pets like you wouldn't believe. I was talking to my dogs this morning, and I was just thinking, I have one dog that jumped in my car at my home group here in Huntsville 5 years ago, and I've kept her, and she's been alive that entire time, and she's been relatively happy, from what I can tell. She loves me unconditionally, and for y'all that know me, know what I do to that damn dog. And if you don't, just look me up on Facebook. But that dog has been my saving grace. I recently just got another one, but I had to die when I had 3 years sober, and I remember standing at the vet counter and crying so hard that I couldn't contain myself. I had this cat for a year, and I had formed such an intense bond with it. Had feline, what was it, FIV? Yeah. You're a cat lady, right? It's FIV, whatever it is. Cat AIDS, that's what it had. And my mom gave it to me. She's like, the cat's gonna die soon. And I was like, no, it won't. Super Josh is gonna save it. And it died. And I was destroyed. And I didn't drink over that. I can feel feelings today. Feelings always kept me drunk. No matter what. I would feel a feeling. I drank to feel feelings, or I drank not to feel feelings. This is in circles. I was upset, so I drink to get happy. Or I was happy, so I drink because I wanted to get happier. Or, just all kinds of insanity. And I don't have to do that anymore. I've been to, I don't want to harsh y'all's mellow, but I've been to lower places in sobriety than some of you guys have been, while you're using, just because I didn't turn to the drink, and, I just kind of wrote it out. And by wrote it out, I mean, I didn't have a sponsor. I wasn't utilizing a network of friends. I literally white knuckled it, and it was awful. Going to meetings, meeting makers make meetings despite what everybody else tells you. That's all they make. You don't have to relapse. It's not a necessity. I know a lot of people believe that, People's new. It'll catch on. I went to bed at 3:30 for God's sake. I haven't had to relapse. I get it, but I don't get it. It's not a necessity. I got in here because I was miserable. If that first drink I took was as miserable as the last drink I took, I probably wouldn't have kept drinking. But unfortunately, there's a lot of fun times, and unfortunately for me, my memory seems to fail me. So when I get in these funks and everything's awful, and when you're sitting in a meeting and it's a gratitude meeting and everybody's sharing about how grateful they are, and you're like, fuck you, seriously, what's your problem? Or my favorite is when I'm sitting in a 10-step meeting and everybody's sharing about how diligent they are with the 10-step, and I'm like, liars. Nobody does that. And then I go home and crack open my 10-step notebook, and it was June of 2011. I was like, oh, meantime, I'm sharing about how good I am at 10-stepping. it's an ongoing process. I'm not perfect. I'm not going to be. One of my least favorite phrases until I had 5 years was, it's like peeling back layers of an onion. And then I did that last 4 step. And I was like, oh, it's like peeling back layers of an onion. I get it, sometimes quickly, sometimes slowly. We come in here and, the fourth dimension changes. What was acceptable for me, what was my fourth dimension at one time is not my fourth dimension anymore. I had to keep striving to make myself better. I've thrown myself in service. Getting sober at 21, the reason I went to NA was because there's no 21-year-olds sitting around a fellowship or a Huntsville group, You weren't yet. Shut up. And so, I went where young people are. So, one of the more important causes to me is this stuff right here. Young people getting together. People thinking, I thought fun was done when I got sober. I was unclear on what was going to happen when I got sober. All I knew about AA was there was a clubhouse right down the street from my house in Decatur. And I would drive by, and this lady I worked with went to AA, and her van was always parked outside. I was like, God, I can't imagine being one of those people that has to go to AA every day. That must be awful. And so 7 years later, I go to AA almost every day, and sometimes it's awful, but most of the time it's really cool. I'm a trusted servant for the Gateway, the Clean and Sober Widespread Panic Bands. I've seen Widespread Panic 40 times in sobriety, and I've chaired a meeting at probably 35 of those shows where we sit around in a circle and we talk about recovery, and how grateful we are to be there, and it's surreal. I'll tell this last story just to get one more laugh, and I told it last night, and I'd forgotten all about it. But I was at Denver in 2008, and I was chairing the Gateway meeting, and this girl walks up and she goes, "Is this the Thanks for Sharing place?" And we're all like everybody's like, I guess, we say that. And she goes, "My friend told me to meet her here." And she sat down in the middle of the circle and said, "What are y'all talking about?" And then proceeded to sit there. And I was telling the story last night. I was like, how awesome would it be if she has 4 years sober now? And her friend just was like, "You need that, meet me there," and just dumped her there. It's an honor to come here. If you're having trouble, and you just don't think you can do it, throw yourself in service. I know Bradford out there, they need constant help at the adolescent side. They need constant help on the adult side. Salvation Army, I bet if you go to a meeting 30 minutes before, you'll probably meet some sordid characters. That's how I met David Gray. You can help people. I lived in a halfway house for 9 months, and for 8 of those months, I drove everybody to meetings every day. I picked up everybody from work. I didn't know I was doing service work at the time. I just thought I was the taxi. But I was doing service work. All that time I was doing that, they depended on me, so I couldn't get drunk. So get some service commitments, whatever it is. We can't smoke in meetings anywhere in Birmingham, so can't clean ashtrays down there, but you sure can. I don't know if you've ever looked at a floor at an AA meeting, but they sure could use a good mopping. Sweeping, mopping, grout cleaning, whatever. Just keep your hands busy, and I guarantee you won't get drunk, and I guarantee you will be rocketed into a fourth dimension that you never knew was possible. And just to tell you a couple more, yes, I graduate in December with an undergraduate degree in finance, and I was just offered a chance at getting a master's degree at the University of Alabama in Tuscaloosa, quite possibly on a largely discounted scale because I'm in recovery, and they're starting a new program there, and they're going to have a recovery dorm there. They're going to have a recovery class there. They're going to have all this recovery stuff there, and I just met the guy, and so guess who's having a mini roundup in Tuscaloosa soon? Anyway, I'm really honored and grateful that I get to come and do this stuff, and thank you all very much.
Thanks everybody for sharing. Once again, we're going to pass these baskets around if you've already contributed or don't have anything. It's cool. While they were talking, it reminded me of a spot in the big book. This is on page 84. It says, "And we have ceased fighting anything or anyone, even alcohol, for by this time sanity will have returned. We will seldom be interested in liquor. If tempted, we recoil from it as if from a hot flame. We react sanely and normally, and will find that this has happened automatically. We will see that our new attitude toward liquor had been given us without any thought or effort on our part. It just comes. That is the miracle of it. We are not fighting it, neither are we avoiding temptation. We feel as though we have been placed in a position of neutrality, safe and protected. We have not even sworn off. Instead, the problem has been removed. It does not exist for us. We are neither cocky nor are we afraid. That is our experience. That is how we react so long as we keep in fit spiritual condition."
Thanks for listening. I hope you enjoyed the podcast. Sobercast is ad-free, and we'd like your help in order to keep it that way. So if you'd like to help us be self-supporting by pledging $1 or $2 a month, visit Sobercast.com and look for the donate links. Thank you very much.